All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild theory, the idea that our entire global economy is teetering on the edge of a cliff. The rules we've all been playing by for the last 80 years, well, they might be about to completely fall apart.
So let's just jump right into it. At the very core of this whole thing is a huge, glaring contradiction. A paradox, really, that makes you question, well, everything you thought you knew about how our economy works, about jobs, growth, even what money is. Okay, here's how to think about it. Our entire economic system, it's kind of like a shark. It has to keep swimming forward or it dies. It needs more people, more jobs, more income, all to pay off the debts from the past. But then you have this other thing, this AI revolution we're building, which promises the total opposite, a future with fewer workers and way more automation. You see the problem? These two futures can't both be true. They're on a collision course, and that's the paradox we're going to unpack.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll really get into that big economic paradox. Then we'll look at the world we're living in, this world built on debt. After that, we'll talk about the two massive forces that are shaking everything up. We'll see what happens when the system starts to wobble, and then we'll get to the big question: what actually backs the future? All right, let's kick things off with the system we all live and breathe in. For the better part of a century now, the global economy has been running on a very specific playbook, one that's all about borrowing growth from tomorrow to pay for today. And at the heart of that playbook is debt. It's a debt-based system, plain and simple. And for it to run smoothly, for the whole machine to keep humming along, it really needs three things to be true. You need cheap money, meaning low interest rates. You need a growing population that has jobs and income. And you need inflation to be slow and steady, predictable. Now, that first one, cheap money, is absolutely crucial because it leads to something called leverage. And all leverages really is using borrowed money to try and make even more money. It's like using a literal lever to lift a huge rock, right? A little bit of your own effort can move something massive. When money is cheap to borrow, everyone wants to use that lever. And this isn't just some high finance thing for Wall Street traders. Nope, it's everywhere. Companies do it to buy back their own stock. Investors do it to buy more assets. Governments do it to pay for, well, everything. The whole system from top to bottom gets hooked on this constant cycle of cheap debt. So, what happens when the things that made that 80-year-old system work start to fall apart? Well, that's exactly what's happening now. It's getting hit by two huge disruptive forces that are shaking it right to its core. Okay, force number one. You guessed it, artificial intelligence. AI goes straight for the jugular of this system. It attacks that one critical assumption we talked about, the idea that we'll always have more people with more jobs making more money to pay back all this debt we built up. And listen, this isn't some sci-fi problem for the year 2050. The cracks are already starting to show. Just look at January. Over 100,000 job cuts were announced. That's the highest number for a January since the big financial crash in 2009. And the crazy part, this is happening before AI has even really been rolled out everywhere.
And the timeline here is what's really mind-blowing. The people who are actually building this stuff, they're saying this isn't a 20-year problem. This is a 1 to 5 year problem. Think about that. If half of all the entry-level white-collar jobs just vanish in the next few years, how on earth does a system that depends on more and more income hold itself together?
All right, force number two is a bit different. It's the breakdown of global cooperation. That predictable, rules-based world that we've had for decades, the one that made everyone feel safe enough to take on all this debt. Yeah, that's starting to fray at the edges, and it's creating a ton of uncertainty. And here's the real kicker. These two forces, AI and geopolitical chaos, they feed on each other. It's a vicious cycle. The more countries compete over AI, the less they trust each other. And the more global supply chains break, the faster everyone tries to automate production back home.
Yeah, for a long, long time, the world's pretty much played by the same set of rules. But that's changing. Now you see trust just evaporating. Countries are using trade and sanctions as weapons. New alliances are popping up. Everyone's starting to question the old way of doing things. And all that chaos, it eats away at the one thing the global financial system needs more than anything else: stability. So what happens when you take these two giant forces, AI messing with jobs and all this geopolitical chaos, and you slam them into an economic system that's built on a mountain of fragile debt? Well, you get fireworks. Big ones.
See, when you can't predict what's going to happen next week, let alone next year, holding all that borrowed money, that leverage, suddenly feels incredibly risky. And that's when you can get what's called a deleveraging cascade. It's a domino effect. People get scared, so they start selling their assets to pay off debt. That pushes prices down, which makes more people scared, and they sell too. For most of us, it just looks like the market going completely haywire. And one of the key symptoms that the system is under a lot of stress is the growth of something called synthetic supply. It sounds complicated, but it's a pretty simple idea. It's when you have way, way more paper claims on an asset than the actual physical thing itself. And this is where a kind of funny analogy with a Pikachu card actually explains this perfectly. Let's say there's only one super rare Pikachu card in the entire world. That's the real asset. But then Wall Street gets its hands on it. They can create an ETF, basically shares of the card. Then they can create futures contracts on it and options on those. Before you know it, you've got dozens of different financial IOUs all pointing back to that one single physical card. The amount of paper Pikachu just exploded, even though there's still only one real card. And hey, this isn't just a thought experiment. We see this happening in real markets all the time. Just look at silver. Often the price you'd pay for actual physical silver you can hold in your hand in a place like Shanghai is higher than the price for a paper silver contract in the US. What's that tell you? It's a huge sign that the market is starting to realize that the real thing might be worth more than the piece of paper that promises you the real thing.
So when you put it all together, this massive economic paradox, the global instability, these cracks showing up in the financial system, it leads to a really, really big question. A question that investors, central banks, and even whole countries are having to ask themselves. In a world like that, a world where the old rules are breaking and a paper claim on something isn't the same as the thing itself, what is real money? What can you actually trust to hold its value? What's the ultimate safe place to put your wealth? Well, in the short term, we're seeing a classic flight to safety. When things get crazy, money rushes out of those risky, high-leverage bets and into, well, boring but stable companies. We're talking about businesses that make stuff people actually need, that pay dividends. Why? Because in a chaotic world, people want something predictable, something real, not something built on a house of financial cards.
But here's the argument for the long term. The only way to truly get away from this whole synthetic supply game is to own the asset yourself directly. To go back to our analogy, you have to be the one who actually takes the Pikachu card out of the system. For something like Bitcoin, that means holding your own keys, self-custody. It's a huge shift, right? Away from trusting a complex financial system and toward trusting something you can actually control, whether it's digital or physical.
And that really brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. We are left staring at this massive, high-stakes collision between two completely different futures. On one side, you have our entire economic system, which is built on human work, and on the other, you have our technology, which is being designed to replace human work. So it leaves us with one heck of a question. When these two unstoppable forces finally collide, which one is going to break first?